when did you start listening to, or what kind of music were you listening to growing up?
I grew up in Boston, and when I had the wherewithal to buy my own music, the first thing I was buying was rap. Nucleus, because the first tapes I bought were Nucleus, Run DMC, and all of this stuff, and Houdini, and early stuff, because I was down with the early breaking craze. And then I immediately got into metal and punk and hardcore, and was listening to hip hop throughout that. But around the time I moved to Chicago, I went head on just into hip hop. I think right around '89.
How would you describe the difference between rap and hip hop?
Rap is an element of hip hop. So rap is something, as KRS famously stated, rap is something you do, hip hop is something you live. So hip hop is the culture of which rap is a field of work within it. It's an aspect of hip hop.
What are the other aspects of hip hop?
I like to use the definition of that Africa Bambaataa gave, because he coined the term hip hop itself. So it's DJing, manipulation of vinyl, 2 turntables and a mixer. It's rap, it's b-boying or breakdancing, it's graffiti or writing, it's the more hip-hop term, and it's knowledge. That's the 5th one, knowledge. So yeah, that's what makes up hip-hop, according to Africa Bambaataa.
You're primarily a DJ.
I'm rather a musician. I'm a vocalist, a DJ, a producer, professional in all 3 of those regards. Yeah, I don't know in what order, but I do them all pretty heavily, and I have a catalog of material for all 3 of those things, of internationally distributed material for all 3 of those things. But I'm heavily into production. Been rapping, so rapping forever. That was always that's the entrance. But yeah, I do all those things. Anything that has to do with the creation of the music of hip hop, I do. Like, try to do it all myself whenever possible.
What did you start doing first?
Rapping. Yeah. MCing is the correct term for that. Once again, it's interesting because these other terms, these rap, graffiti, these are old terms. These are terms that were appropriated to what I think it sounded like from the outside. But within the inside, it's emceeing, it's writing, it's b-boying, not breakdancing, you know. But yeah, first thing I ever did was b-boying as a kid. And I was dead serious as a kid. I kind of jump into things and take them very dead serious. Had a boom box, had everything. Me and my friends would get out there. We had the hats. And actually, I remember back then we would try to rap on like, we would make tapes, pause tapes, and we would loop up parts of hip hop, parts of like Houdini songs that were open where they didn't rap, and we would loop them up on tapes and we would rap to it. So I guess I could say I was kind of doing all 3 of those things, because that's kind of a form of production and early DJing, the looping of the tape, and then the rapping into the mic. As a kid, I was doing it as a kid. When I got older, and when I really, what I'm doing now comes more from at some point me deciding to do it, and that was around high school, later in high school, and that was definitely like rap first, and then right after that I started looking for records for some reason, for old records. Somebody in Chicago I saw played a record, and it was some sample that I recognized of some song, and that just sent me off. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get records, and I remember being like the only kid who was rapping who was like decided to do that too. So
yeah, that was gonna be my next question: is when did you start collecting records?
Yeah, this is like early 90s, 90, 91, and the first thing I did was raid my dad's collection, and I was lucky that he had a funk and jazz collection that was pretty out of this world. Like, and I'm only realizing it now after 20 or so odd years of looking for records, that my dad really helped me with a great foundation. So, yeah, so I've always appreciated, I've always found the connection between what I do with hip hop and contemporary thing, and this contemporary sort of music, with 70s progressive rock with psychedelia. I find the connection with punk music. I find the connection in jazz and in R&B and in soul and in blues. Everything. It's no difference to me. I spend most of my days listening to older styles of music anyway. So, but yeah, and that's what I love it. That's like my passion. It's just like finding all this crazy stuff. That being said, I'm pretty active at making my own music, and yeah.
What makes for a good sample? What are you looking for?
Anything. It could be anything. Anything. I look for records from different perspectives. I'm a collector, so I look for old hip hop records just to have. I look for old records that have good samples on them, but I might not want to sample them in actuality. I just might want to appreciate the arrangement or something and derive something. When it comes to actually me creating my stuff these days, I look for the less obvious and I look for the more obscure, the more rare, everything to keep other people from being aware of what it is. And then even then I'm very into either that or using anything and obscuring it to the point where it didn't matter where I got it from. Isolating a guitar chord and then putting it down an octave and then stretching it or something and manipulating to the point where it was just a tool. That's the point I'm at now because I'm into creating my own stuff. So as much as I appreciate all this old stuff and I like for the sense of hip hop and the feel of hip hop, sometimes maybe just rapping over some old stuff. I don't want to get caught up in rehashing. I want to make sure that I'm always using sampling as my own art form. So anything could be a good sample. That being said, I try to keep my mind open.
So what you're really looking to do is create something original and
Right.
make the reference so obscure. The challenge is making the reference obscure that people don't get it.
Right, or if it calls for it, not making it obscure, but making a point of making that art and making sure that I've paid attention to the detail of that, making sure that that's an art and that's an artful statement that I'm making. So I do know though, if I'm going to appropriate some old music, I'm going to, for the sense of hip-hop's purity and what hip-hop was based around, I'm going to find the vinyl record. I'm not going to download the MP3 of it on iTunes. If I want to do something with a Luther Ingram song, I'm not going to go on the internet and try to Google search Luther Ingram because that's not playing into the rules of hip-hop. Hip-hop comes from vinyl records. The idea of that is that if they're not sold, like old records, you can't just go in a store and be like, give me that Luther Ingram. You can't just go in there and ask for any record on vinyl, but you can go on iTunes and find a lot of stuff at some sort of non-existent format or whatever that is, those MP3s. But finding the record is a much more difficult challenge. Finding it in the first place, being able to track it down, know what it is and all that stuff, and to find it in its original format is the first. So if I am going to use something old, it's going to be off of a vinyl record, or if it was only on cassette tape, maybe that. But I'm not big on the if you're gonna sample, I'm not big on doing it from a digital format, right, because it doesn't take any work.
Well, we always sort of look at the community standards and what is the community aesthetic and what do they define as good. But so it seems to me that part of the community aesthetic or the standard is for it to be a hard to get reference.
Absolutely, it comes from that. And only with technology, like I said, with Google, did it change that sort of idea of it. And it took away, and then if your argument is all these things that make sampling real, like, it just takes away from the purity of it, and it allows people to be lazier.
Right.
When hip-hop was first started, you had to find these records, and you couldn't, like I said, you couldn't just find them, so it was about, like, people would take whole chunks of crazy obscure samples and then just rhyme over them because the idea of them having that would set them apart from everybody else. If Diamond D had a certain loop, I didn't have that loop. Other big time producers didn't have that loop. They didn't have or know the record. You couldn't just go online and be like, hey, you couldn't Spotify it or anything. You heard it, and if you didn't know it, you just didn't know it. And what are you gonna do? Listen to every record until you find it? That's what you had to do if you wanted to find it. So there was a serious challenge to actually getting out there, and I really appreciate that. I am been called a purist at times, like in a rule. I'm kind of the guy who says there are rules.
In a way, but that is also part of the satisfaction and the artistic reward recycling something but creating something new out of it?
Absolutely is. And see, that's another beauty of hip hop, and it was made to be this horrible thing, the sampling thing for so long. When every artist that ever sample music has always been of the type of music samples itself. I mean, art samples itself. It's just what it is. But every once, if things come along, just like the synthesizer came out, all the jazz guys are like, oh God, no way, you know what I mean? This is, but come on, like, now it's just a part of anything, just like sampling is. You want to do your own thing with it. The idea of adding vocals on it, isolating a part, let's say, I like to use the worst case scenario. So people like to talk about Puff Daddy or something like that. And I never liked Puff Daddy, and I thought what he did was lazy, and I thought what he did destroy the idea of the culture of sampling, and he was not following the rules, and he was being a jerk about it, taking the first 4 bars of a platinum Diana Ross song or something like that, and then. But even the idea of taking that and then having somebody rap about something on it, you know what I mean, champagne or whatever, and then the repetitiveness of just that 4 bar, it already, whether you like it or not, or want to appreciate it or not, or think it's good, it is its own thing. It becomes its own thing from the minute you isolate it, to me. Because it's like everything is different if you add a little bit of something to it. It becomes its own creation. You can decide it is valid or not in your own mind, but in the idea of the realm of creation, it is another thing. But I don't ever want another musician. I'm a smart dude, and I would never want any other intelligent musician to think that I was lazy. So I make a point to not be lazy to myself,
right.
To wow myself, or try to do something. I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm proud of this. Yeah. This is my stamp, on it. So. That's the idea of hip hop, is be original. So it's funny, the idea of hip hop is be original, and it comes from like taking this music. But there's so much beauty to the idea of that too. Like the idea that Diana Ross is a known name to so many people as a result of being used by somebody like Puff Daddy, or James Brown his career just lived way longer than it probably would have, because every other funk guy, most of the other funk guys weren't able to stretch it out, but hip hop continued him. Yeah. So it's like a really cool thing for African Americans to be able to, like, for me to know all of this jazz and all of this old stuff, but I owe that to hip hop, So,
well, what about using a sample or the whole process as a way to pay respect to influences and elders? Is that part of it?
I mean. Yes and no. I know these guys. I know enough about these guys. I can even point out artists and probably have an idea of where they stand on sampling. They've either made some sort of statement or something. So the idea of respect, it's in a greater sense. It's maybe not directly to the artist, because they may not view it that way. Yeah. And respect is only as good as it's taken. So
good point.
If I use a Jack McDuff sample, and I'm doing something creative and wild with it, and I'm listening to it, I'm like, man, I really did something here. And then I play it somehow for Jack McDuff, his old self, and he's just like, boy, why'd you use my sample? Use my record. You should have left my stuff alone. Then it's no longer, Right. So the idea of showing respect to these guys, it's more, but at the same time, created a culture that a lot of them were able to get money from, and they respect that, I know, and I know Jack McDuff respects whatever royalties he gets from somebody sampling him, and the idea of continuing the legacy of that music when it would otherwise have been dead. Hip hop could have easily, in the 80s, when hip hop was drum machine based, before samples within hip hop, before we had the technology to really do that, it could have gone out like that, and it's kind of getting back to that now because of sample laws over the years. But it decided, hip-hop, these cats in their early 20s, in the 80s, decided that they wanted to rap over music from 20 years before them. I mean, it's a beautiful statement. And it's not something that happened in history. It didn't happen in the 70s, people weren't dying to hear the 50s music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think any of these old guys should be mad. I think they should respect it. If you're a real musician, you respect progress and creation itself, progress or not, just creation, and it didn't have to go that way. So
Earlier you talked about how to sort of bury a sample so people couldn't identify the source,
Mm-hmm.
and you talked about dropping it in octave and
Mm-hmm.
some of the tricks. Could you talk to them about the actual art of making a loop and sampling?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's definitely at the point. It's just you hear something and your mind arranges it some way. You might hear a horn, and your head might say, "This would be a great turnaround." So, at the basis of hip hop is the drum, the kick and the snare, the boom bap, boom bap, boom 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 bap. Within that 4/4 musical framework, it's a rock 4/4, it's a soul 4/4, it's a R&B. That's a classic, blues. It goes 4/4 where you can count out the measure, and it starts on the 1, ends on the 4, whatever count. So within that, that's why it's no different to me. Also, that 4/4 measure makes it. And jazz doesn't adhere to that, but still you can hear jazz within a 4/4. Sometimes it does, but that's considered sellout jazz. But even when it doesn't, you can hear things and hear that in a 4/4 context. Anything you can hear in a 4/4 context can become a beat. It can become something, good or bad, depends on your own artistry. But so for me, it's like, can I hear it in a hip hop context? Can I hear a boom bap through that? You know what I mean? And as an artist, it doesn't even me. I'm much more broad, open minded than that. So even now, I'm not stuck in hip hop just because I have appreciation of so many other things. But I make hip hop, and I love it. So I might even do something that's not in 4/4. But the basis of the idea of sampling, though, comes from, can you hear it in a 4/4 thing? So when you're first starting out, you actually have to hear the whole musical piece, all the instruments and everything, even with the boom and the bap in it. And then you're like, that's a loop. That's a sample. I can just rap over that. Just loop that up, But the more you get into it, if you're serious about it, the more you're like, well, let me take that loop and let me chop it this way. I like the end part and I like the beginning part, but I don't like some of that stuff in the middle. So let me see if I can get rid of that stuff in the middle and just squeeze it together and find just the better parts. And let me find these parts. You know what? I don't need the drums to be in there. I can now appreciate jazz without drums because maybe I can hear it in my head and I can figure it out and I can program it in my machine and just start figuring it out. And then you might get to a level where you're like, let me just get this bird sounds thing and see how I can manipulate this. So it's just a thing. It's just any good producer will try to challenge himself. I like to keep it in the context of where at least somewhere in the music there's an essence of traditional hip hop because that's what I'm into. That's a sound that I really really like.
What is traditional hip hop?
Boom bap, where it has a sort of toughness to it. Where it has an organicness to it. Because the early MCs were rapping over records, just being play one record, play the part you really like, and then play the other, spinning the breaks, doubling up breaks by having 2 copies of a record to extend the part of the drum breakdown of a record you want or you like. So you're now just rapping over the drums. Walk This Way by Aerosmith or something. The first part just starts out or something like that. So you just keep that going. So now you have the sound, you have the organic sound of a live drummer who's actually playing that, but it's also combined with the sonic fidelity of then being recorded in a studio and now being pressed to a piece of plastic for all intents and purposes and being played on a diamond head or some sort of needle. So it gets a grit to it. It develops a toughness to it. The digital sound doesn't really do. Hip-hop's traditional sound is a tough, gritty sound because it's coming from that sonic background, and also it was based around drums and percussive elements which were loud and somewhat abrasive, not smooth. My problem is one thing hip hop is not R&B. Hip hop, jazz is not R&B. Jazz is not country music. I don't believe in putting things in boxes, but I also believe in respecting the integrity of an idea. And so hip hop is tough. It's supposed to sound tough. Doesn't mean you have to talk tough over it or whatever, but the actual feeling of it is supposed to be hitting you and gritty and not smooth. It's not, you're supposed to know the difference between a Yanni song or whoever and a Run DMC song. You're supposed to be able to okay, well that's hip hop. You know what I mean? I say all that to say that I think now as hip hop has become pop music, it's just like any other pop music. It follows whatever pop trends it can to exist. So most music that people say is hip hop and is not at all hip hop to me, because I don't believe there's like certain things that people like if I play like a Lil Wayne record or like a Drake record or something, and then I play it back to back with a Run DMC record, I don't see sonic similarities. You can say that it sounds like this now. This is just the new way of sounding. I'm like, yeah, but this is just something new. It's just something else. It's cool. It is what it is. Some sort of pop influenced by hip hop thing, but that ain't hip hop. Nothing's going boom and nothing's going bap. Nobody sounds tough. It all just sounds like R&B. The guy was singing. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? That's not hip hop. You know. So that's what hip hop is. So.
You know, you just made me think of, I used to work for a folk music magazine, and I had a writer who reviewed bluegrass, and in his eyes you had traditional bluegrass, and the stuff he didn't like he called glossy bluegrass. What you were describing as non-traditional hip-hop almost sounded like...
glossy bluegrass. Well, except for the fact that it's not just that I don't like it, it didn't exist when hip-hop was being coined or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and if it did, it was not accepted. You know what I mean? Like, we weren't having that. Like, yeah, you want to sing on your record, that's great. You want to sing from start to finish, listen, great. I mean, listen, you want to play the violin, whatever you want to do, and that's cool. But that's not hip-hop. That's not.
So it has to be rap to be hip-hop.
I mean, it just has to sound like hip-hop. Yeah. You know, and then a hip-hop person would know it, you know? A hip-hop person would know it. Now, see, rap is something rap is something that's powerful, and it's also something that was easy to commodify in a capitalist society. So rap drives what people think hip hop is, but it's rap. These guys are rapping. It's rap for sure. You know what I mean? Like, but is it hip hop? Hip hop has a sound. Hip hop does have a sound. You know what I mean? It was started in the South Bronx. It didn't start in Kansas. It didn't start in Compton. You know what I mean? It really did come out of one. We can historically say this is where it came out of. So all of this, well, it's just, all right, that's cool. Everything is what it is, and everybody has their own thing. But that's the sound that exploded, and that's what I liked. So that's what I try to continue.
Why do you say rap is easy to commodify?
Because anybody can do it. Because you can pick it up. So essentially, you could just tell some idiot to just, this is what I want you to say. I mean, it's just and it's easy. It's the easiest thing. It's a powerful thing because it's just speaking in rhythm. So people immediately gravitate towards it. It's a bigger thing. Rap is interesting because it's bigger than hip hop. I mean, graffiti is bigger than hip hop. You know what I mean? You know, these things existed before. Rap is just people speaking though, so it's just such a powerful tool that it's easy to have it. You know, everybody can do it. You can have it as many people. You know, and it's easy to sell it. You're just selling a persona. You're selling words. You know that people want to hear. It's just much easier to sell than the idea of the skills of DJing or the idea of b-boying being in mainstream culture, continuing to stay in main. It go every few years. It pops up and then it dips out again. Graffiti, which is of all of these elements, a criminal element at the root of it. You know what I mean? I mean, the America and Jacksonville recognizes the idea of graffiti as criminal activity. So that's not you can't commodify that. They try, you know, to put the idea of this raw art form in like a museum setting or art gallery settings and all that, and that's great, and that's successful. But the essence of what it is makes it hard to commodify. Knowledge can't really, nobody worth their billions wants to spread the idea that knowledge is cool because they want to keep their billions. So therefore, rap is the easiest thing. So it's a powerful thing. It's in that regard. It's easy to commodify, and it's become what's recognized as hip hop. If you rap, then it's like, oh, that's hip hop.
Can you talk a little about improv and the importance of improv within whether you're MCing or DJing?
Yeah, I've always freestyled every DJ set I've ever done. Some clubs probably don't want to hear that, but I have. MCing, freestyling, or DJing and just doing a set and just going off the head. It's all just, it's being informed. and making the idea of practicing it, even if you're not physically practicing, is something in your head that's important to you. It's a priority to me. So for years I was known as a freestyle rap dude. I would battle, and I would, I did my thing. I did really well, and that was cool. And the idea of doing that is cool. It's like it's fun. It's fun, especially for me. It's like if I hear a beat or a rhythm that gets me like, oh, what's that? Or I'm just like, oh, and I'm liking it. I just, let me see what I can come up to off the head with that. And that's always been fun. But, you can do it if you are informed, if you have a vocabulary, if you have the ability to speak, if you're funny, if you're scary sound, and you have a good voice. All these things come into play, and then you can freestyle. And if you can put words together really off the head, if you can think quick, you have a direction and things to say. DJing is the same way. If you're informed, if you like, for me, I keep a catalog of music that I record, and I've listened to the song when I recorded them. So when it goes in here, I put it in here, and I know where it is. And it's time to DJ. I'm like, yup, this goes with that. Looking at the crowd, oh, now I'm gonna play this now. It's just a feeling. And if it means something to you, it's an expression. So you just do it. And I love the improv, and that's the jazz right there. That's what makes jazz what it is. And hip hop does that same thing. Hip hop does that same improv situation. And even cats in California would take it to a level where they wouldn't do it in a 4/4 pattern. Mostly freestyling is done to a hip hop beat, which is in a 4/4 pattern, which makes it, you have a framework to work with them rhythmically. But hey, I appreciate even freestyling, like a free jazz sort of thing, where it's extemporaneous, where it's not following any sort of time pattern or something like that. Once again, griot stuff. There's just different ways of doing stuff people have always done.
I actually went to West Africa and interviewed griots.
Nice.
Why do you bring up griots?
Because it's just weird. Like when a cat is freestyling, he's speaking on his experience, his day, what he's doing. He's offering a story, wisdom, knowledge, a way of speaking that can inspire. It's just that's what griots did. They passed down this heritage through spoken word. And that's what we do. It's one of the major ways that we pass, I think, ideas around. Now.
You mean by freestyling?
Yeah, I think just passing around, and that's passing around the idea of an artistic idea. How you view the world, how this person views the world. Yeah, for sure. I can listen to a cat. I'll go out to the Lyricist Hour these days, so that's where I get my little sort of like, here's some cats. I'll be like, all right. So there's a video going around, a viral video of a particular guy from Jacksonville, and it's on like one of these sites where they show like what's called World Star Hip Hop, and they show like all sorts of crazy shit and hip hop related, like fighting at Denny's or something like that. I don't know. This guy, but it's funny to hear, like, if there's a guy from Jacksonville's in one, he does not, it's not actually casting him in a good light, and it's funny to hear a week later people drop references into that in their freestyle, and like that's some shit that happened. The test 2.5 million views worldwide, so many people can relate to it, but we're like continuing that, like we're like, and it's funny to see people be like, what, that happened, and now that's a part of the folklore, you know what I mean? Essentially. So
I mean, it's always kind of getting, current events are always feeding into it.
Yeah, current events feed into it. I mean, they naturally may or may not feed into anybody's freestyle, like I might decide to rhyme about just, how cool my belt is, or I might decide to rhyme about, getting profiled by the cops that day, but the idea of like expressing your existence in a sort of uninhibited way like that, and rhythmically, that definitely, it's a way, as corny as it may sound, it's like definitely a way cats communicate.
Where does the idea of rhyming sort of enhance the artistry and the power of the expression?
Well, it provides melody, you know what I mean? It provides, whereas rap is just talking, it provides a way, a framework for your mind to enjoy it musically. The idea of like rhyming words and stuff. Yeah, actually rhyming words, it's the brain reacts to it, you know, to rhyming words. Yeah, it just puts it in a form where it's enjoyable. It's impactful too. It's hard to explain. I can hear cats rhyme like a Chuck D who didn't rhyme like every word, like it's very, very in like any sort of standard format. It was a lot of just like bursts and stuff. And sometimes when some of his words would come around and rhyme, you'd just be like, oh man. Or there's a guy like Percy P, who's like one of my favorite MCs, who's not nearly as known as he should be. Who was such a like technician with his rhymes that he had 6 and 7 rhyme schemes within a few bars worth of words, and like a guy like Eminem is known for doing that now, but he doesn't do it like Percy P does, where Percy P did in like a classical poetic sense, where you could take it into a literary class or literature class and break it down. Nas as an MC is extremely good at rhyming at places you wouldn't predict or expect, making it all even that much better, that somehow musically it works without explanation. And that's the most powerful part of hip-hop, because it's just speaking, it's just communicating, it's communication, direct communication, without the melodies to get in the way, without all of that, you know.
Well, and that's where I think improv is so powerful, when you can improv and then you can do so eloquently and artistically as expressed through rhyme.
Right, because language is a musical tool, you know. Yeah, it's just a musical tool, how you can use it not only to express but to create music and to create a sound that sounds good to the ears. And, you know, not everybody's good at it, but it naturally is just, that's what it is.
We were talking about improv, and you sort of hinted at the impact the audience can have. You were saying like, oh, I'm going to grab this record. Oh no, wait. I'm gonna grab this record
because it's a feeling. It's a feeling. Even when you're rhyming, and you know, a lot of cats, you know, if you're battling, you gotta look at the guy. You know, you gotta go with the moment. You know what I mean? The crowd might respond in a way that you're like, okay, let me use that to my advantage, or let me now say this because they were digging this, or they didn't dig this, so now let me go on a different route, or any number of things. Or somebody said something in the crowd, I barely heard it, but I kind of heard it. And if I say that right now and reference that, you know, like if I'm saying something, and when I get on stage, I'm going to cut up, and then somebody says something, then you're battling this guy intensely, but you want to ease the crowd, you want to make them feel involved, so that you're like, something, and I get on stage, and I get the tables, and I cut up, and then somebody's like, boo, you suck, and you'd be like, wait a minute, shut up, you know, and the crowd's like, oh, and that's like a moment, you know what I mean, where you can only do that in the moment. You got lucky because there was something you could play off of.
Right.
DJing is the same way. If I'm, you know, DJing is all about, I'm trying to evoke something out of these people who are here, whether it's generally dancing, but it might be, I want them to just tap their feet and dig it and hear this, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's just, you know, you look at their faces, you suss out what they're doing, you get a feel for the energy. If you're doing a big party and there's mad people and a lot of people, they're going crazy, yeah, you're very intensely like making sure, okay, I got to keep bringing, I'm controlling the energy level. I want to bring them up. Now I got to bring them down a little bit. Now I got to bring them up. What am I going to do? Okay, this might do it. Let me hear it in my headphone. No, this ain't going to do it. This is too slow. You know what I mean? Oh, boom, this is going to do it. But is this too sellout for me? And that's when you have to make like moral decisions as a purist. I want to rock the house, but I really don't want to rock the house with this lousy shit. I want to teach them too. I don't want to, that's my thing. I've never been a DJ. I don't want to just see DJs like, you just there to, you know, make them dance. I'm like, yeah, that's your job. My job as a music connoisseur is also to direct them into where I think they should be. So if they're listening to something, then I'm just like, y'all just listen to that because you hear it, because the mainstream radio and mainstream television is forcing it down your throat. But I'm going to play you this. I'm going to find a way to play this Horace Silver quintet and make it relevant. Or I'm going to play Muddy Waters, you know, and I'm going to make it relevant, because you're going to be like, that sounds like there's some sort of hip-hop beat going on. And they'd be like, yeah, well, he did a sellout record, you know, and put a funk beat to it, you know what I mean? So here you go, and I'm going to double it up, a cool part of it, and you're going to think it's a hip-hop instrumental, you know? Still raise it, you know, but yeah, you have to That's all elements of it. The crowd, your environment, your comfort level, your knowledge. I don't, these days, depending on the gig, some gigs I will come up with an idea of a set, a very clear idea of a set, but a lot of gigs I'll do with DJing wise, I'll just be like, I'll just bring enough stuff, so I'm like, yeah, I can go do whatever I want, and that's how I have fun with it too. I enjoy putting music together and juxtaposing it and finding ways to manipulate it. Rapping, I do. I was saying before, I tour and that's another thing, and I do out in Duval that I don't know anybody that does like I do. Except for my partner Willie, who's recently been keeping up with me. But I've been going to Europe, doing full-blown out tours in Europe for the last few years. Saudi Arabia, North American tours, big festivals, Coachella, Bonnaroo, all these big festivals, done them. And when you're doing all that stuff, and when you're constantly at home, and all my free time is spent listening to records, listening to rap music, finding out old facts, just being entrenched in the idea of hip hop, you should be able to walk out and not have to, and be able to freestyle everything, the beat, everything. It's all like skills, like they say. If you have skills, then you can apply them. So if you have skills and you put in the work, you put in time to understand what this is all about and what this was and why you're in it and what you should be doing in it and what your place is in it, then you should be able to open your door and be like, who wants the hip hop? And because hip hop's a competitive thing, it should be, nah, for real, who wants the hip hop? No one? Shut up then, I'm going back to do more research, you know what I mean? That's how I look at it, at least, if you're in it, you're part-time with it, then hey, have fun, and I'll take it easy on you, but if you want to be serious, it's about doing the knowledge, and so that you can spontaneously do it anywhere. You have to be ready to go. Grandmaster Caz has this famous thing, this guy from Cold Crush Brothers has this famous thing where he says, you got to be able, if you're an MC, you got to be able to rap anytime. Somebody says, bust a rhyme, you got to be able to bust a rhyme, so you can't just be like, yeah, you got to be able to rap in the moment, otherwise, the real culture of hip-hop, not the culture of rap, but the culture of hip-hop says that you're not qualified to be in it then, if you can't do that. Yeah. Nowadays, technology, money, fame, all of these things, the trappings of the society, mean that those rules are, just like any other thing, like jazz, you know what I mean? Eventually it's just like, fuck that, we're trying to make money, you know what I mean? Who cares about rules, Herbie Hancock, shit, synthesizer, and so, but I'm that guy, and I represent that for Jacksonville, very happily.
I should probably start winding up, but
yep.
What's distinct about Jacksonville's hip hop community? What makes it? What gives it? What folklorists often talk about sense of place.
Jacksonville is so interesting because Jacksonville has this suppressed art culture. I've gone back and done the research. I know about the sort of Renaissance, the Harlem, their sort of Harlem Renaissance they try to do downtown and stuff here. And Jacksonville is this place that has no industry, no entertainment or art industry, yet has birthed a lot of artists and entertainers. A lot, historically. Mm-hmm. And right now, in my opinion of traveling the world, I've traveled the world several times, I can say that Jacksonville has the cream of the crop talent in Jacksonville is up there with everywhere else. What makes it different here is because there isn't any outlet. There's no outlet. And yet, there was a scene, seeds of a scene that were embedded here years ago, in the mid '90s, early to mid '90s, that a lot of people here see it as viable because they see some people doing it, and we all know each other, but I like to say, I don't want to give myself too much credit, but I do like to say that cats like myself and Willie, who have a very specific aesthetic, and people have seen that over the years, and it's not a pop aesthetic, has inspired a scene of cats here who are also like-minded, who are continuing that idea of being original and not trying to. And it's interesting because when I travel around now, I see more and more people who are just trying to do whatever the radio sounds like. And in Jacksonville, there's actually, with people like Tough Junkie, there's like a scene here of like that isn't so. There's actually like a nice underground scene here where undergrounds are dying out, you know, within the hip hop context. So Jacksonville, by not having an outlet, in a way, allows it to be very pure. Still, because people come here, I bring people out of town here. They're like, man, it's kind of like a scene here. It's like, you know, like cats are like b-boy. You'll see like cats actually break in, or, you know, like the Lyricist Hour thing, or just come to a party and it'll be cats actually like DJing like on a quality level playing. So I think Jacksonville's special in that it has never had its time to shine, and yet there's a lot of dedicated. There's a nice handful, I'll say, of dedicated people here who could exist anywhere. It's one of these places though where people end up, you know, they kind of have to make that decision. Or am I going to stay here and try to work it out, or am I going to go somewhere else and try to really make something of it? You know, and those, you know, I've made the decision that I'm going to travel, but this is my home base of operations. But because I have a home here, and I think it'd be a little difficult to move these records. Yeah. So I'm just gonna. My whole thing is travel. I try to make sure that I'm traveling, getting around. But Jacksonville is special, and the fact that it just doesn't have any outlet yet, it still manages to exist.
Yeah, I mean,
I think people are waiting on like what's gonna happen? Is Jacksonville gonna get on the map or something? And I kind of don't think so anytime soon, because it's just, once again, I've lived in cities that are classically like that, Chicago's and Boston, whatever. Like, but it's just Jacksonville's not a city for that. It's not how the city is created. It's not what it's for. It's the city is, it's more residential. It's definitely any industry it has. It's nothing to do with entertainment. So,
right.
But I like Jacksonville, and I'm very, the people who impress me here would impress me anywhere. I would take any of my top favorites from here, and I would put them in a room in New York or Cali and LA, and just I feel fully confident that they would impress people.
It's kind of like, since there hasn't been anybody to make it big, nobody feels like they have to follow somebody's model, and they all have their own style.
You nailed it, right? The success that they have seen has been like my group Asimov or something like that, where they see, okay, well, here these weirdos did something, you know, so maybe I can just do whatever I want, you know what I mean? Like, apparently I'm should do whatever I want, because, you know, none of the more trendy stuff has ever really, has not done so well that it's been like influenced anybody like I could get a success with it. I think you're right. I think you nailed it. I think people are figuring out their own way, and it's a good place to figure out yourself, because it's not that fast paced, and it's not that pressure of a New York or even a LA. You can figure yourself out, you know, and if you're into it and this is really what you want to do, then your mind's going to go there, and you'll have the space you need, you know. There's not a lot of my thing is you create your culture here. You know, you find your culture, and we create it here. We created this hip-hop culture here. It's not just something that's just entrenched, you know. It has a lot to do, I think, with the geography of people living a little bit further away from each other and living on sides of town here. So people create their culture and then go find the other people who are like-minded and continue it. And hip-hop is this underground sort of hip-hop thing in Jacksonville is one that's... I definitely look at it now, and I can look at it after, you know, I moved here in '95, and I was on the scene from the first day. So, what's that? 18 years? Yeah. Shit. I can look at it and be like, yeah, man, Jacksonville, man, like, yeah, some cats who really kept it going, like, and younger cats who've just come up and just kept it going in a really cool way. So people like this guy Drez from Black Sheep. I bring him up because. Bring up two people, because Drez is a legendary hip-hop dude. I'm friends with a bunch of legendary hip-hop cats, but of all of them, Drez is like very super duper official because he had like the first platinum rap song, and it was the choice is yours. You can get with this, or you can get with that, or you can get with and it was a real hip hop song. So he says all the time in interviews, like, Jacksonville's crazy because he knows me, Junkie, and Willie, and he thinks we're crazy, and he's just like, there's something in the water down there. I work with my man John Robinson in Science of Life in New York, and he's just like, I gotta come to Jacksonville. Every time I go anywhere in the world, and by the time they've met myself or Willie or heard of Tough Junkie, I always get the same thing. I gotta come there. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
Like, you guys are on some, like, it's not like that other places. Like, people don't feel like, everybody, even the creative ones are kind of on some trendy creative things. So, there's something cool to be said about that. And like I said, Jacksonville doesn't even know it, but it bursts like really quality people. Like my old DJ partner, if you look right behind you, there's a sign that says like this. Kes Rock did this. You're gonna go talk to him. My man Kes Rock drew this.
Oh wow.
That's an old flyer. I'm also the collector guy. I'm the only guy with all the old stuff. Yeah. So this is an old like flyer from like '97, I think. And he did the flyer. DJ's TNT. That's when I was Therapy. It was Therapy and Thorough. Thorough is now 50 Cent's DJ.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, and Thorough was a Jacksonville DJ. Now, if you ask Thorough, he also is on Shade 45 and Sirius Radio every Saturday. He's a big time, famous DJ. You know what I mean? And you ask Thorough on the radio. So, where you from? New York, North Carolina, anywhere but Jacksonville. Because the only other thing about Jacksonville is there is the idea of this classic sort of hold a cat, like support a cat till he gets almost to the threshold, and then drop all support. In which people sum up as being a crab pot.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, and he felt like he escaped the crab pot and wasn't no reason to turn back around. I talked to him. He talks to the people who he came up with and respects, and I can get in touch with him anytime. It's all good, but generally speaking, he's not going to rep, and that hurts Jacksonville because I try to tell people all the time, like, like 50 Cent's DJs from here, because that means something to like anybody. Everybody's heard of 50 Cent, And I'm like, not just from here, like, that's, like, was here. Like, everybody knows he was here. Like, we all know him, Kes know him. That's Kes's man. That's how, I know him. We're all three of us were really good friends back then. So, Jacksonville spawns these things that I feel unappreciated here, but I don't care because I'm an artist and I'm very much into my own life and stuff. But, I mean, yeah, I went to Saudi Arabia last year to do rap.
Right.
Nobody does that. I don't care where you're from. You could be born in Manhattan and nobody does that. Nobody goes to Saudi Arabia to do anything of culture. And I know why, but they don't let people do that. And I just got back from doing that with the U.S. Embassy. And before that, I was like in Budapest and with Willie and in Europe. So Jacksonville, the community, I do want them to step up because they kind of shoot themselves in the foot a little bit. It's like you want to be on the map so everybody can prosper, but you have to get behind people. You can't like get behind them in the early stages and think that they're famous because they did one interview or something. It's not the case. But I see even that changing. But that's why I got a lot of love for what Jamal does, because he's continuing what he's doing with the Lyricist Hour is almost single-handedly continuing it, whereas a guy like me or Willie, we're pretty much in our own artistic bag, and we're trying to be, we live here, but I don't consider myself an artist, Jacksonville artist, a local artist. I don't, it's not even my market for that matter. But like Maul, doing that Lyricist Hour, then the other kids, the younger kids come out. Yeah. And they, and they get to see how other cats are doing. And that's what I'm saying, that influences them. If they see the people who people like, or that they're getting, respect, or actually like these guys who are doing something that's not so normal, then they're probably going to go home and probably going to gravitate towards that. Yeah. And here, it's like, the nerdy side of hip-hop is just as popular as the thuggy side or whatever it is, and interacts a lot. So that's another thing here. I think we interact a lot with each other. The different sort of hip-hop scenes, like we know each other, and it's not so separated. It may be a little bit because it just naturally will be, thugs and nerds don't hang out, but there's a healthy rapport. And I think if that couldn't, even get a little bit tighter, you know, a lot of cool things could happen.
I noticed that last night. I was down at the Dilla show.
Okay.
That everybody had their own personality, but there seemed to be a really supportive environment.
Right. There's that's what's growing, because I think the idea is, you know, once again, like, the guys like me or whoever the old guys that people look up to here, on any side, we're cool with each other. So that, you know, and I think there's, and that's super cool, actually. The more I think about it, I don't think I ever thought about that so much, but there is, and that would be even cool, like that, if that gap could get even closer, and everybody could just see it as being in an art community. We're not all doing the same thing, but we all are making art. Mm-hmm. I think that's really cool, and I do see that. And
the crap out idea is simply that anytime somebody's trying to get out, they get
pulled back in. Yeah. And I extend that to what I actually specifically see is just like support, no support, no care, whatever. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, that's when the cats really needed your support. You know what I mean? Because that's when they get, because that's when the crap out there becomes a jealousy sort of thing. And it's like, oh, you know, okay, now we pushed you up to this level, but I don't want you to get too big because I still got to do, you know, come on back, you know. I'm lucky I didn't grow up here. I'm lucky that I didn't grow up here, but I'm also lucky that I moved here in '95. I'm able to play both sides of the fence. I'm able to be a pioneer here, but also being able to rest in the fact that it's because I came from somewhere else, you know.
Real quick, just if you could list the different groups and names you've had since you've been here.
DJ Therapy. That's who I was. Asimov.
That was with Willie Evans Jr.
Yeah, at Basic and Jay Wonder, and we were Asimov. And sometimes DJ Shotgun or Kensky or B Noise, which was those three guys were our tour DJs. That was a group I had, Asimov. I formed with them. I was still Therapy. I also formed a group called the Smile Rays while I was still going by Therapy, with Bat Sauce and Lady Daisy. And then I changed my name from Therapy to Paten Locke and started putting out music under the name Paten Locke. And now I have also a group called Dumbtron. I am also the co-founder of a DJ crew called Little Green Apples, LGA. Yep. Officially a member of City Street Breakers. Yep. And that's who I am. I put out records. That's what I do. I put out records. That's who I am, and I think I'm special because I'm the only guy that tours and puts out records and makes it to my career. That's because I sacrifice, and I have a daughter, so people. I don't have a 401k, but I have this. So, yeah.
Well, cool. I appreciate it. Hope maybe there's definitely, at least for me, more I'd love to talk about. So if you've got time.
But any way I can be involved, this is like I said, this is my career, so all of this stuff is like necessary stuff for me to do to feel valid and not having a job. So